Hey, everybody. Welcome to Grilling on the Green here in Portland and in Oklahoma, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Seattle, and San Francisco, all kinds of places. We'd like to thank the folks at Painted Hills Natural Beef the way nature intended. Don't forget, you can now shop online for Painted Hills beef if it's not in your part of the country. All you have to do is go to paintedhillsbeef.com. They have an online store, and when you're checking out, just type in the code BBQ Nation. That's my other show, if you didn't know that. And you get 15% off your beef order, which will come right to your doorstep. Also, Birdie Ball, we'd like to thank John Breaker and his family back in Colorado. Birdie Ball is a great practice tool. If you don't have a lot of space and you can't get to the range, what have you, I would suggest maybe you get a little box of birdie balls and a mat and have at it. So go to birdieball.com. Well, I'm very excited. We've got Frank back today. Yes, the Frank Nobilo from CBS Sports. If you don't know much about Frank's career, I'll see if I've got this correct this time. He's had 14 professional wins on 5 different tours. Frank also won the New Zealand Amateur and the New Zealand Under 25. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jeff. You're actually hearing the stakes at the start. I could really do with a New York strip Pittsburgh style right now.
Okay. I'll see what I can do about that, Frank. So, from your perspective, and you get a perspective very few people actually get to, sitting in a tower or in the trailer at a tournament, give us kind of a Frank Nobilo overview of this last year. It's been 2 years since you've been on the show, but we'll just do a year here. Kind of, what's your overview of the status of pro golf at this time?
Well, I know you said it's 2 years since I've been on the show. I think you've got to go back 2 years. Obviously, Liv is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room, because that's also going to decide what happens in the future. The framework agreement, which Jay Monahan and Yasser supposedly had till December 31st. The clock's ticking, time's running out, because that will determine the future. So to answer your question, it's been very messy, because that's loomed every week on social media. Players talk about it on the range, what's going on. Obviously, we try and focus on the coverage during the course of a tournament, but we're very aware of it. We think it's, when you're covering a tournament, people want to watch what they're watching on the screen. They don't need to be inundated with our opinions on the world of golf. But yeah, it's messy. I'm a little disheartened, to be honest, because golf's given me everything I've ever had in my life. I still think it's a phenomenal game. It doesn't matter what level you play at. And I think for the best players in the world, I sometimes think that they don't realize how lucky they are.
You made a comment on another show a few weeks back, and forgive me because I don't remember the show you were on, but you made reference to that. Like, these guys are 25 years old, making anywhere from $10 to $40 million a year. That's not a common practice in most professions.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine actually in the driveway here. If you went back historically with what sportsmen earn to the average person in the street, sport has been this amazing thing to be involved in over the last, you could say 40 years. Whether it's NFL, whether it's hockey, baseball, basketball, tennis, golf, we all fit into that. And then that sort of increasing slope of payment. Soccer, obviously, too. I shouldn't leave that out. That's huge around the world. So I think they're in a real purple patch for getting reimbursed for the sport they pay and play and love. But I sometimes think that the average punter, who is so important to it, the viewer, right? They get paid like, if it's a soccer stadium, if it's an NFL stadium, baseball, the people that pack it out and really watch and love the game, that watch it on TV, they create so many jobs. They obviously create a fortune for these players. They keep people like me in business as well. So I think at the moment, what's lost is the recreational player, and the viewer, I think, is the one that's sort of been punished over these last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think what really, after I heard your other interview, and then the clip surfaced around that time too of Patrick Cantlay saying at the Ryder Cup he didn't wear a cap because nobody was paying him. I'm paraphrasing like that. That really hit me hard. As a huge fan of golf, I cover golf, of course, and that type of thing. But it's like, is that really what we've come down to? I mean, it's a marvelous game. It's a marvelous world. If you're lucky enough and talented enough to play at the top levels, like you were just talking about, good for you. You put in a lot of work to get there. You had to. But to make a comment like that, I just thought was kind of, I don't know. It as we would say in our business, it was bad optics.
Yeah, it was bad optics. On one hand, I'm glad he said it because too many players in the locker room have intimated it. So at least he got it out there in front of the world so they can discuss it. And there are two sides to that. Obviously,
Sure.
I think the players are well immersed. He did say at a Ryder Cup where they do play for free. The European Tour benefits a lot from the Ryder Cup. The PGA Tour, not so much. It's run by the PGA of America. So there was a little bit of nuance to it, but you're right. It didn't come across great for obvious reasons, especially when they got a shellacking in the end. It was, it looked like America was going to start this run of winning a bunch of Ryder Cups. So I think it really hurt. It hurt people that were very patriotic to the American team. So you could see
Yeah.
why it hit a nerve.
Yeah. And it just, like I said, I don't want to belabor the point, but it just kind of like Ryder Cup and then President's Cup, and you've been involved in those, I know, and that, but that's kind of a separate, if you will, for your country, for your continent, whatever. That's a little, not little, but it's a side event that in my mind was always kind of separated from the money and the, trying to win the $1 or $2 million, which is the top prize money each week now or more, like that. And I don't know, it just hit me wrong. So I'll just leave it at that. But I was surprised, Frank, when you were talking about Live, the vitriol that especially like on social media and some of the commentary, man, it is, you're either for us or you're a Guinness, as they used to say. And gosh, it's like, can't everybody take a breath? I mean, this is the state of affairs we're in. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, we're in that time of our lives, though. You look at politics; it's the same. You used to be, red or blue, and you could still go out for dinner and talk. But now you're like, if you're a Republican, well, I'm not going to talk to a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, you're not going to talk to a Republican. It's a shame when a country is that divisive. So it's just translated over into sport, and of course, social media is the perfect platform for that. And of course, if you've got a new startup in Live, and one of the things I do like about it, they do play around the world. I think that part's important. The PGA Tour has had an opportunity to do that in the past, and haven't done it. So it was an opportunity. Obviously, I don't like the large sums of money. I think it's disproportionate, and it's caused some of the issues that we've already talked about. Because as soon as you throw in pots of money, people think their value has gone up. All of a sudden, they're different from what they were yesterday. And you could, if you went back 2 years ago when we last spoke, for example, and this wasn't on the table, golf was on an incredible trajectory. But I guess you could also say because of that trajectory, it made it more inviting for the Saudis and the PIF to become involved, as they're also looking at tennis supposedly. So we're on this glide slope that made us probably rich for the taking. But consequently, to your point, it's created the ugliness because people say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with an alternative to what we see on the PGA Tour? I don't have a really good answer for that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I don't think it has to be ugly. But it's turned into you're either in this bag or you're in that bag, and it's pretty much like everything else we read in the newspaper now. We can't. You used to be able to sit down, have a drink, and chat, and it used to be great to disagree, but now it just gets plain old ugly.
Yeah, it does. We're going to take a break here on Grilling at the Green. We're going to be back with Frank Nobilo from CBS Sports, one of the Tower Rangers, if you will, out there. And we'll be back in just a minute. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Grilling at the Green. I'm going to ask Frank a travel tip here. Every week I ask my guest a travel tip. We've got some folks that love golf and love this show, Weston Kia out here. And so I always like to get tips, if you will, from somebody like yourself who's logged a couple million miles in those big flying cigar tubes. So have I in another life. But What would be a Frank Nobilo golf tip, travel tip? I mean, excuse
Travel
me.
tip.
Yeah.
It would have to involve St. Andrews, not just for the golf course, but the whole area is built around the university there.
Yes.
And I've experienced St. Andrews in open championships as well as an event that used to be called the Dunhill Cup, the team event, and playing for New Zealand. And it was neat to go there in October when it was cooler, it got dark a little earlier and all that, and to enjoy the town. And so St. Andrews is this amazing town. So Scotland is a must for everyone because if you go to Scotland, it's cold, it's for the hardy and all that. The wind's going to blow, but it's so different. And the game's partially along the ground. You don't have these force carries, so you're not going to lose a bunch of golf balls, and it's just fun. And they all know the game. That's the thing. You'll see people walking along the side of the golf course. CBS, we cover the Scottish Open, and we were staying at the Marine Hotel, which is right next to North Berwick, which is one of the most famous golf courses there too. It has the 15th hole, which is a Redan par 3. I won't get into course architecture now, but our hotel's right on the edge of it. So I would walk down to the little village and you just see people playing golf, and you just stop and watch. And so it's that sort of environment. So that's a must. And if you're going to go that far, you might as well throw Ireland in there as well, because there's some great courses north and Ireland. But obviously I come from down under. It pains me to say this, but you've got to go and play the Sandbelt in Australia. For a Kiwi to sort of praise Australia, it's a bit hard. But the golf courses at the Sandbelt. I was just down there for the Asia Pacific Amateur at Royal Melbourne. They have probably 6 or 7 of the best golf courses in the world within 6 or 7 square miles. It's wonderful. New Zealand's got a few good ones too. But if you do go down to Australia to play golf, you've got to go to New Zealand, and you take your wife too, and go through all the tourist areas and go to a place called Queenstown, which is my favorite place in the world.
I've actually played in Australia, Frank.
Oh, you have? Whereabouts?
Yeah. I played in it was a town. It's called Orange, and then Bathurst.
Oh, Bathurst, where they have the motor race.
Yeah. Played there, and I actually got to play at Royal Melbourne too.
One of the lucky ones.
The fellow and his family I was staying with, he was a banker, and I didn't ask how he got me on. It was just very nice of him to do it, and what a phenomenal time I had. So I've got a couple courses under my belt, you might say, down under. It was a lot of fun. What is your one guy on tour, if you will, that you think has made the most progress over the last couple of years? You see stuff that we don't see. I mean, I know you watch it on a monitor and you make your commentary, but you also can look out the window and you see these guys on the practice range or chipping and putting and all that. Who's made the biggest leap as far as their game, do you think?
The last 2 years, it's an easy one. Victor Hovland. He's just world class now. I remember being asked in 2022, who did I think would be the breakout player? And I said Victor that year. It took him another 12 months. He's actually hooked up with a guy called Joseph Mayo, or social media, you could find him as Trackman Maestro. And they've just had a huge year. They won the FedEx Cup, but just his style of play, it's aggressive. He's just a really honest, down-to-earth guy. The other guy I thought that was really going to stand out this year that didn't because of injury was Will Zalatoris. He just had his first start in the Hero. I thought Zalatoris would have a great 2023, so his name has to be thrown out there. But injury sidelined a couple of players this year. But it's good to see Zalatoris playing well again. Well, should I say at least playing again? But yeah, Hovland, no doubt. Europe's had a good year, I think, because not only did they win the Ryder Cup, but they had Victor Hovland as well as Ludwig Aberg, who was a pick in the Ryder Cup, and you could argue probably because they were light with some of the live players that were out. And if it wasn't for that, Aberg probably wouldn't have got the pick. But he won in Switzerland, I think it was 2 weeks before the Ryder Cup, and he also won over here just a few weeks ago. So golf's had a lot of great stories. If you get past all the trash at the top, the trash talking as well. Camilo Villegas just winning about a month ago was a good story. He hadn't won for a bunch of years. So, but to answer your question, yeah, Victor Hovland, he's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and Villegas had some personal tragedy in there.
Well,
They lost, he and his wife lost a young daughter. I couldn't even imagine that. And yeah, I'm always rooting for the guys that make the comeback. That's just my nature, but I really like to see that. And Camilo was has done a good job. And Hovland, is he as nice a guy? Because he's always got that smile on his face.
he is, but he listens to the music he listens to. Honestly, I couldn't listen for more than 3 minutes. It'd give me a headache. He listens to heavy metal. He's just different. And he, I think he does appreciate where he comes from. His time in Oklahoma, went to college there for 3 years, still has a place in Stillwater. But he's a Norwegian that's like, hey, this is great. I've gone to America and they pay me a fortune and I love to play golf. That's exactly who he is. It's good.
Yeah. Well, as long as he's not eating too much lefse or whatever, I think he's probably gonna be fine. It was good. Speaking of comebacks, and we've got a minute or so left here, Frank, before we got to go to break. Saw Tiger last weekend at the Hero and watched what we could see on TV. That was really inspiring to me. Now, I'm an unabashed Tiger fan, I'll say that, have been for a long time, but he seemed to be getting around pretty well. He said prior going into the tournament that he was rusty because he hadn't played in a long time or any competitive rounds for quite a while. But I thought that was a real breath of fresh air also to see him back.
It was, because his voice is important in the game, especially when it's going through troubled times. He elevated the game to levels that we've never ever seen. Every player playing now probably should, I don't know, dip into their pockets and pay him 20%. But yeah, just to see him playing, especially with what he's gone through, we'll also see him again soon because he's going to play in the father and son again with Charlie.
Yeah,
they might very well be the favorites, but yeah, he's an inspiration. Just he keeps coming back. You could argue some of it's self-induced or whatever, but it doesn't matter. To be able to come back from the back surgeries, and I was told that ankle was gone. They should have amputated. So he's fought through. It's remarkable.
Well, I'll say this before we go to break. I think if Charlie starts playing on a regular basis on television, it's going to bring a lot of teenage girls into being fans of golf. I'm just going to say that. Frank and I are going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Grilling at the Green on the iHeart Radio Network. Welcome back to Grilling at the Green. I'm going to make Frank hungry again because I want to say we want to thank the folks at Painted Hills Natural Beef the way nature intended. Don't forget to go to their website, paintedhillsbeef.com. Put in your order, type in Barbecue Nation, get 15% off. And also Birdie Ball, John Breaker and his family down there. John was just on one of the Christmas shows, did a great job. They have a little discount on there too. I think you have to write in, I'll check this for you, but you have to write in Golf Green 15 and you get some discounts there if you choose to use it. And the last one, this is one Frank will be interested in also, is pig powder. My co-host, this Hall of Famer Leanne Whippen on my other show, and she and her family owned a product called pig powder. And I can tell you absolutely, I'm going to have her send Frank some. It's one of the best rubs on the planet. It's won that award too, by the way. So go to pigpowder.com and order it there. I always try to tie in the food, Frank. It's just me.
I was going to ask you what pig powder was. Now that I know it's a rub, I'm really interested. So that's
okay.
My wife's a good cook, actually, and I don't know. We used to have like turkey bolognese, and she used beef the other day, and it was 100 times better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'll see what I can do about getting you that New York strip, Frank. Okay. Actually, about the pig powder, I not only used it on pork and beef and that, but I've used it on I made some fresh green beans with bacon the other night, and I put a little pig powder in. It was marvelous. So very good. Let's get back.
Licking my chops.
Yeah. How's your wineries doing? Your family's wineries?
It's publicly owned. It was bought by Constellation and then sold to LA. So to be brutally honest, that's why I work for a living. Yeah.
I got it.
Really mine. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Are you still the ambassador?
No, I haven't done any sort of when I sort of stopped playing golf on a regular basis. That sort of went by the wayside. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So let's get back to talking about golf. This morning, they made the announcement about the ball rollback.
Yep.
And 2028, 2030. And then there was a little subtext in there that they're going to look at maybe the drivers next and that type of thing. The one thing I don't hear or didn't hear in this conversation much, Frank, and I wanted to get your take on it. I was kind of like, well, you can go ahead and roll the ball back, but these guys now that are playing on the tours and the ladies tours, they're athletes. They go to the gym, they eat you know, baked chicken with steamed broccoli. I mean, they do all the right things. They work out 15 times a week. They're just going to figure out a way to regain that 10 to 15 yards or whatever they're touting as the rollback, I think, because they're athletes.
Yeah, they will. Distance has always been part of the game. It doesn't matter if you go back to Ben Hogan, who was long despite his small stature. You know, Jack Nicklaus was as long as they come, and people try and say, how far would he hit it now? You know, technology then has sort of jumped in. Metal drivers in the 80s, they weren't that popular initially. And then I think it's Bernard Langer, the 1985 Masters, is the last player to win a major championship with a wooden driver. So, once that ship sailed, everything changed. And then things kept changing from the mid 80s to 2000, where you had, obviously metalwood, they developed that, got better and better. The advent of graphite. Graphite's lighter, so you could make the driver longer. When you increase, I think it's for every quarter of an inch is potentially a mile an hour clubhead speed you can get. That adds up to more yardage. So there's more and more and more. And then every time you tweak the driver, you tweak the golf ball. It's just like any other sport. Sure. And you put the two and two together and you get a lethal combination. And then for the elite players, you're right. They're athletes. They've realized through stats and that how important driving distance is. We knew it was important, but for example, 8 feet on an 8-foot putt is the 50% mark, right? So if you make an 8-footer, you make 50, you make half a shot, you miss it, you lose half a shot. You think that's sort of quite big, but hitting a drive, 340 yards is a big advantage over 300, even if you're in the rough. And the guys have figured that out now, so they're going to keep going down that street. So the RNA and the USGA really didn't have, they saw the writing on the wall, 15, 20 years ago. But, everybody's always fought it and kicked back and say, well, the game's great. Why change it? Why change it? But you can see this sort of, you can see the dead end if we keep going this way. Par fives aren't par fives anymore. I see more wedges and 9-irons hitting the par fives than what I do people laying up. Admittedly, that's on the tour. So if I'm a recreational player, I feel like I'm being punished. But the only way around it was bifurcation. PGA Tour, PGA of America, they weren't keen on that. So really, the USGA and the RNA, they had one decision: do we do something or not? And I've always abided by the rules of the game. And
sure,
it might be a bitter pill to swallow initially, but it's going to save the game.
Well, I hope so. I hope so, because I was reading this morning on remarks and comments by some of the president CEOs of some of the golf ball manufacturing companies. And some of them were like, yeah, we'll follow the rules. We thank the USGA and the RNA for their time. And other ones were like, we'll do it, but we're kind of doing it begrudgingly, if you will. And I didn't read through the whole article because I didn't have time. Honestly, I didn't take the time. But I find it interesting to do that because a player like myself and a lot of people that listen to this show, they're just weekend warriors. They probably need every yard that they can get. And then there's some of them that don't care. They just want to go out there and have fun with their friends and go I'm kind of in that lot. But go ahead.
Jeff, you're not going to use, as a recreational player, you won't lose that much. And the other thing that's happened, especially over the last 20 years, is they've made the driver more forgiving, for example, and the fairway wood's more forgiving, utility clubs. So for the recreational player, the longer shots have become easier to hit through that technology. They're not taking that away. And even if you want to, if you struggle pitching and that, they, there's wedges up to 64, 65 degrees. So they're giving you a club too that makes it easier for that. So they've still allowed a lot of equipment to try and make the game a little easier for the recreational player.
Is the ball actually going to be that much smaller? Is that how
no, it won't be small. It'll be the same size. I mean, there's actually talk, believe it or not, of making the ball bigger because you'd have more aerodynamics, perhaps more spin. That was, I think, Ben Crenshaw talked about that a few years ago. It's actually not a bad idea because as a kid in New Zealand, I grew up with the small ball, 1.62 inches, and that flew, probably like the golf balls of today fly.
Right.
And then, the late 70s, early 80s, the rest of the world all changed to the 1.68. So it was like a rollback for us. We used to have a ball that penetrated the wind and it flew straight or all of that. And then all of a sudden now we're going to use the same ball that the American players were using. But what actually happened in that period of time, that was the boom of international golf, because all the really good international players got better because they had the same product they were having in America. So, I guess I have a more positive look at it. I actually think it will, I don't look at it as we're losing something. I think if you love the game for really what it's all about, which is one of the few games you get to breathe fresh air, you can play with a bunch of other people, you can still compete, play with your grandkids, all of that.
Yes.
A lot of people point to COVID and they go, well, hey, this game's booming. No, what COVID did was reminded people how good golf is to get outside, why you need fresh air, and why a good walk in the park and a challenge is important. It's not a video game. I voice for EA Sports. That's fun. That's when the ball should go straight and you use a controller. Golf's you still you got to grind at it. You got to work at it. It's very humbling, but it keeps making you come back.
That is true. It's the worst addiction I ever had. And I don't really have any addictions, but I will tell you, it feels like it some days when I need to get out there. So on a personal note, do you ever give Jim Nance a hard time when you're off camera?
Damn right I do. He gets an award every week and he's so damn good at his job. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, he has a very good sense of humor, actually. And we both have May birthdays, so we're Taurus and we're stubborn. But yeah, he likes to joke around. It's good. I was going to say it's a shame people can't hear things in commercial. But yeah, he gets ripped on and he enjoys it and he gives it back. Yeah, he's a good leader. He really is. Makes the show better.
I know that sometimes if you watch him on football when he's partnered up with Tony Romo, you can hear him kind of needle Romo kind of just before you go to break. There's that kind of underscored little comment there, and then they go to break. That makes part of the broadcast really worthwhile.
Sometimes it's not that subtle too. You can, he's good.
It's all good. Excuse me. We're going to take another break. We're going to be back with Frank Nobilo from CBS Sports. We will talk some food and cooking when we come back, because I know Frank likes to do that. And then I don't think Frank suffered through this the last time he was on the show, but after the show, when we record the lightning round after our session, I've got some really good ones for Frank. He'll enjoy them. I'm not being sarcastic. You're listening to Grilling at the Green on the GNN iHeartRadio network and all of our affiliates. Stay with us. Welcome back to Grilling at the Green. I'm JT, along with Frank Nobilo from CBS Sports. How many tournaments do you think you played in? Before we jump into the food stuff, Frank, how many tournaments do you think you played in your pro career?
Well, I have no idea. Honestly, I turned pro when I was 19. I played for 23 years, played all through Asia, Japan, Europe, obviously America. I stopped counting.
Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't count the number of flights I was on. And then part of me too is that when I stopped and started this, I put all my energies into trying to be as good a broadcaster as I could be. So it's not that I don't know that I played before, but I just sort of put it in the back seat. If you went around our house, you have to look really, really hard to find golf memorabilia. I keep that in a very private place. So I look at my career now as an announcer, and these guys play the game. I'm envious the way they play. So to me, it's like, hey, that's ship sail.
Yep, I understand.
Mm.
I understand. I think after I reached the 2 million mile mark on the airlines, it was like I didn't want to think about it anymore. It was just, can I get an upgrade? That was the only thing I was worried about, was could I get an upgrade? Okay, let's talk about your cooking. Are you
Mm.
still were you a big green egg fan, if I remember?
No, gas. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
lazy. Yeah, gas barbecue. Anytime there's meat, and especially like whether it's a flank steak, cut it sideways, then I'm responsible for that. But every now and again, I'll put the heat up too. Slow heat cooking, I'm not very good at.
Well, and that's kind of tougher to do with
Yeah,
gas,
yeah.
really. I mean, if you had pellet's the easiest one to do slow cooking on.
Mm.
And we have a few of those parked on our back porch, along with gas and charcoal and all that. What's your what is your favorite thing to cook? I know we talked about this last time you were on the show, and you were kind of, no pun intended, grilling me about my cooking. But what's your favorite? What's your favorite thing?
Well, I'm going to say steak, but rather than serve out a slab of meat, I'll cut it sideways,
Mm-hmm.
and so serve it in small pieces. So I crank the thing up as hot as I can get it, and then I'll cook, whether it's a flank steak or New York strip. New York strip's probably my favorite more than anything. And I cheat. I use the meat thermometer,
Oh, that's
and
perfect.
yeah. So we like to have it rare, medium rare at the most, and we'll vary on what the rubs we'll use. Sometimes I'll try and use more of a Spanish rub. Throw a little bit of lime in there as well.
Sure.
But Montreal seasoning, if you're in a hurry, always seems to work. But then yeah, if we get it out nice, and I sometimes I won't let it rest. I'll actually slice it more straight away rather than let it
Yeah.
rest, because I don't want it to keep cooking. Yeah,
Well, there's a big
I'm probably doing it all wrong though, Jeff.
no, no,
Yeah,
not at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Because I'll tell you, there's a big discussion always in the barbecue and the cooking world. Do you let it rest? Do you
Hmm.
not let it rest? The science actually says letting it rest doesn't do much for it at
Well,
all.
that's good to hear.
And I'm one, and I think you probably are too. I would like my roast steak, whatever. I want to still hot, or at least
Correct.
very warm when it's
Yeah,
on my plate, because you can enjoy it that way.
yeah.
Other people are saying, no, you got to let it rest for 5 minutes. Well, exponentially on the science side, not that I'm Mr. Science here, but you'll lose about 30% of your temperature after 5 minutes sitting out in the air. Okay. So if that steak is 160, or not 160, 130, 125, 130, by the time you've let it rested for a few minutes and then you slice it and it gets on the table, that meat's probably going to be about 75 to 85 degrees.
Yeah, which
So
is not what I want.
yeah, that's not what I want either.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. I'm not much of a rester. Uh, we get a lot of people on my other show that talk about that, but it's like, I don't know how much, I'm not, this isn't directed at you. I don't know how much you cook when you're talking to them, but that doesn't make any sense to me. And I've cooked a lot, but that's
Mm.
just me. That's just me.
Well,
Um,
my wife's a good cook too, and she can eat fire hot.
yeah,
So the thing is, if I have the steak fresh off the grill, she loves it that way too. If I let it rest, unless the plate is boiling hot, same thing. I mean, it just sounds like, it tastes like warm meat.
yeah. In that, you might as well throw it in the microwave at that
Yeah.
point, which is the true cardinal sin, if you will, to do that. Um, is there something you'd like to try to cook that you haven't yet?
I've done ribs, I think twice, and once was good, and the other was very average. So, and once again, because it's a gas barbecue, I went around to a friend's place, and he's got a slow cooker that's programmable, and it was like cheating. And the ribs were fantastic. So I guess
Yeah,
ribs, I'd like to, when you go to Memphis, and there's so many good rib houses, and I
right,
actually like a dry rub when I go to
right.
Memphis. So I'd like to replicate something like that, to be honest.
It's a little tougher to
Mm.
do with a gas grill,
Mm.
but it can be done. Um, One of the things that I would tell you is, if you've got two racks on your grill, if you
Yeah.
can put the ribs on the upper rack, you get a little more air circulation of the warm air, because you're going to keep it at a lower temperature to do it. You can't cook ribs at 450 degrees for 15 minutes. That ain't
Yeah.
going to work. You know, you might as well go out and chew on a Bridgestone tire. Anyway, Frank and I are going to get out of here. We're going to do after hours in a minute, but Frank, it's really nice of you to agree to be on the show again, and I've missed talking to you.
Likewise, Jeff. It's always fun. And thanks once again for the tips, too. Hopefully, one day I'll be a better chef because of you.
I'm sure you will. We're going to get out of here. We'll be back next week with another edition of Grilling at the Green. Go out, play some golf, and remember, be kind. Take care, everybody. Welcome to After Hours here on Grilling at the Green. We're very fortunate to have Frank Nobilo with us from CBS Sports. You've heard Frank. I love Frank's commentary. You know why I love it, Frank? Because you say just enough. If you've worked in the media as long as I have, and you almost have at this point, sometimes commentators can expunge a little too much of their own knowledge or something. And that's what I like about you. I mean, I like you as a person too, obviously, but my point is your commentary is always spot on, very succinct. Yeah, there's humor in it. Sometimes you can be, maybe they shouldn't have hit that shot, but that's what I think makes you stand alone and above a lot of folks in your profession right now.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's very good. Now I'm going to abuse you here with the lightning.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. I figured there'd be, give with one hand, take away with the other.
Yeah, something like that. We'll start with something fun. What's the dumbest thing you've ever seen while covering a tournament? Something that the rest of us couldn't see.
Oh, that you couldn't see?
Yeah, that we couldn't see, but you did.
Wow, because I was going to say the first visual I had was Henrik Stenson at Doral trying to hit in a white pair of underpants. But I think everybody's seen that. So, but at the time, I thought that was hilarious. I know Henrik, I know he's going to live in that, but seeing him go down to the tidy whities was still the best thing I've ever seen.
Sorry.
No problem.
I don't know. The gremlins came running through my system here, and I don't know what happened. So
you get a weird email. I just emailed you and said I lost you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
Henrik Stenson, but
everybody's seen that shot. I think. It was. Do
you want to start again? What do you want to do?
It's etched in my mind. Stenson in his underwear out there. So yeah, let me just start that again. I'll just ask you. So Frank, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen while covering a tournament? Something that we as viewers on TV cannot see, but you can see from your tower position or in the trailer.
That's pretty hard, really, because most of all the stupid stuff, most of it gets shown. Even it happened before, we normally roll a camera on it. So it would probably have to be amongst each other, really, where, somebody fell off a chair. That would probably be me more than anyone. Colt Knost gotten lost. Colt Knost probably doing anything is one of the dumbest things that, that people don't get to see. I kind of like him, so he rips on me, but yeah, he's a breath of fresh air. But yeah, some of the stuff Colt does, is probably the funniest stuff. Yeah,
I noticed that you guys have done little competitions. I've seen little clips of you guys either doing trivia or trying to throw a golf ball through a hoop or whatever it is, and those are always pretty funny. Yeah,
well, I'm like an old guy. You're meant to respect your elders. He's always dragging me along into other things than that, and I finish up being his Uber driver, and I don't know.
Yeah, you're the designated driver, and he's the designated drinker. Is that kind of the
pretty much? And I get lost everywhere I go too, so that's a bad combination.
Okay. Do you have like a favorite golf book? Doesn't have to be like an instruction book. It could be a Dan Jenkins book or any of the golf writers, but that's something that most pros that are working in the media, they don't share that very often. It's kind of a well-guarded secret.
Well, I'm going to go down sort of Scientist Street. Golf Machine, believe it or not. I went to Europe in 1981 or 82. So I was a 21, 22-year-old. And I ran into Mac O'Grady. I played with him at a tournament called the Lawrence Batley. And Mike Clayton, who is a really good course designer now, was also playing in Europe. He was my roommate because weren't playing for as much money in those days. And I said, the next week was Holland. And I said, Mike, you got to meet this guy. He's crazy, but it's so impressive. And Mac wanted to play a practice round the next week in Holland. So we did. And Mac, at the end of the trip, finished up giving me a copy of the golf machine and 64 pages, psychostyle pages of questions that would help you. If you read the question, it helped you find the answer in amongst the book. And the golf machine wasn't one way to play golf, but was more like I don't know, dictionary for golf or whatever. I know a lot of people complain about it and go in there, but I still think it's a very undervalued book. Anyway, when I was flying back home to New Zealand, which is a long way to go from Europe, I read that book cover to cover and I used those questions. The very next start I had, which was a few months later, was the New South Wales PGA in 1982. And that was the first pro tournament I ever won. And I'll never forget it because I thought the book gave me a reason why shots went a certain way. To me, it was the TrackMan of that day. And I can see why these players use TrackMan exclusively because you get a direct recording of the shot you've hit, the why, and players always want to know the why. So for me, the golf machine, it helped change my career. Yeah.
Good. If we declared Frank Nobilo as supreme ruler of golf for one day, what would you decree as supreme ruler?
What would I decree?
Yes.
Wow. I'd fix the Live PGA Tour deal for a start. I'd realize that it's a marriage that has to be done. And I'd you're going to hate this, but I'd roll the ball back. They're doing that anyway.
No, that's
I'll do two things in one day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Then you could, you'd be in the Supreme Ruler Hall of Fame if you did two things in one day.
Well, I think if you do one thing in one day these days, politics or anything, you're in the Hall of Fame for doing anything.
If you could dine with a historical figure, doesn't have to be from golf. It certainly can be anybody, alive or gone. Who would it be and what would be on the menu?
I don't know. I've got a vision of Winston Churchill. That sounds stupid, right?
No.
Churchill would drink in the middle. It would drink all day, basically. He'd take his hat off. That would be a good thing. So we'd have a whiskey. He's English, or was. So he probably wants something. But I'm feeling steaks too. So I would actually make him have a New York strip, Pittsburgh style steak. I would let him choose the dessert. And we would drink his whiskey to start off with, and then I would normally say a European red, but I would actually then go with a Californian red, like a Peter Michael or something like that.
Yeah. I could see Churchill. This just flashed on me, Frank. I could see Churchill, if you were having the steak, Pittsburgh style, cutting a piece of steak and then dipping it in his brandy and then eating it. I don't know why that vision came to my head, but it did. What's your favorite golf course in the world?
St. Andrews, without a doubt, really. It's a golf course that was built for everybody. I think that's one of the reasons why it helped pay for my first house. I said on your show that, there used to be a tournament called the Dunhill Cup, which was a team event, 3 players, 16 countries. And so I played in that. I think I played more Dunhill Cups than anyone. First played there when I was 23 years of age, played a couple of 2 or 3 open championships there. And I just felt privileged. The Swankin Bridge, where everybody takes a picture, everybody in the world that's meant anything to the game has walked over that bridge. The clubhouse, the town itself, it's St. Andrews. And that's also why when you talk about equipment, you want everybody to keep being able to enjoy a golf course like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to play it twice though.
First
time you have to play it twice. The first time you will be underawed. Yeah. Okay. And then you start to appreciate it after you played it the second time.
Wasn't it Sam Snead who, when he rolled in there, his famous quote, like, somebody needs to mow these hay fields or something along those lines? And
I think you're right.
So you figured it out. If you could play a round of golf, Frank, with one of your golfing heroes, who would that be?
I never got to meet Ben Hogan. I had the opportunity in the late '90s at Colonial, and I didn't do it. And then he passed away the following year. I
Yeah.
played all the players in my generation. I never played with Johnny Miller. I think that was it. Every Nicholas, Watson, Trevino, all of those. So it would either be Johnny, who I worked with a little bit, my Golf Channel days, Stroke NBC. I'd never play with him, even though I knew him. I still know him as a man. So yeah, it would be it would probably have to go to Hogan. Yeah, because just the mystique, the aura. I just love to see it. Never saw him hit a shot. I'd love to. Yeah.
I saw him in person one time at Shady Oaks, long time ago. I was down doing a show in Texas, and they took me over there for lunch, and he was sitting in the corner at his regular table.
Mm.
And I said, "Is that Mr. Hogan?" And they said, "Yeah, that's him." And the waitress kind of put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't go over there." And I, okay,
Mm.
like that. But that was, I did see him. He was older then. Um, what's the biggest mistake you think you've ever made while being on the air?
Oh, I've made a bunch. Really, I try not to remember them.
Besides giving Colt Nose crap?
No, that's not a mistake. Um, wow. I could say something, but it would really throw me under the bus. But that wasn't live golf, so
Say whatever you want.
no. Honestly, nothing comes to mind. There's been plenty of them. You misspeak. I remember just recently. I don't want to blame a statistician, but there's a player called Callum Tarrant, and I think we were in Canada. It might have been 2 years ago. And you're going along, and it was in the middle of a long run, and the statistician points to Callum Tarrant, and and it was like there's never ever been a Callum or Tarrant. I can't remember which one we got his surname and his Christian name back to front, and he's actually a member now at Lake Nona where I live. That's the irony of the story. And he goes, "This is the first Callum that's ever played the PGA Tour." And anyway, I went with it on the air. And then I remember Jim Nance looking at me, Ian Baker Finch looking at me, Nick Faldo looking at me like, "Did you just say that?" Like everybody on the tour is like for the first time. It doesn't matter if it's Byron Nelson or Tiger Woods. It'd be like saying that's the first Tiger Woods. And I realized how stupid it was. And I tried to double down on it, but it didn't work. But yeah, I think there's been too many idiotic things that you think that were okay at the time, and they just didn't come out the right way. Or
Oh yeah,
sense.
that does happen.
Notice I don't want to throw myself under the bus completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. So here's a fun one for you, Frank. If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
Panda. Panda. That's who doesn't love a panda?
Oh, they're cute.
Yeah.
And they get very well cared for.
Exactly. That's why I want to be looked after. Yeah. Panda.
There you go. What's one thing you miss about your 20s?
Oh, my 20s. Never worrying about tomorrow.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I think I was traveling around the world. I went broke twice trying to play the game. But you just always, today was important. That was it. You had a series of todays. It was fun. And then all of a sudden you grow up and you have responsibilities and you worry about your house, or you're going to pay for it, or all those things, and life changes. But yeah, the 20s was a series of todays. I miss that.
Yeah, me too. When you retire, if you retire, there's no reason for that. What would you want to do?
I'm having that discussion with my wife.
Uh-oh.
My wife wants to keep working. I've said I want to stop. I want to stop sooner rather than later. I actually want to travel, but travel differently. I've been to these so many different countries, and I want to take a camera, and I love photography. I want to get back into that, and I want to like go back to where I've been and see it differently, because it was just a destination. all these. I'm never going to. I don't know why Brussels pops into my head. It sounds good, right? If you ask me something about Brussels right now, I couldn't even name a landmark or anything I've seen.
Right.
Venice, you name it, places in Italy. Yeah, so I'd like to go back and revisit some of those and actually see what I missed.
About the only thing I can remember about a lot of the different places I was were maybe a restaurant that
Mm,
had, a really good signature dish or meal. And I could say, yeah, when I was in Boston, we went here, or we, Florida, whatever. And, that's about the only thing I remember. Cause like you get there, you saw the hotel and the venue,
mm.
and the short trip, hopefully in between. And that was about all you remember, and which gate to get on the plane at the
Mm.
airport. That was, I, there was a lot of them.
Never
So,
enough time.
never enough time. When you were playing, and you had these lengthy weather delays, or even as a broadcaster, sometimes you guys, it's so bad that it's raining so hard or whatever, you replay part of last year's tournament and that type of thing. What do you do when the delays are on?
Try and sleep. Annoy people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I annoy people. That's my job, really. So when we have downtime or commercials and whatever, the producer at CBS, Salah Shai, his favorite phrase, and it's normally directed at me, is "pump the brakes." So invariably, if I'm, during commercial or during rain delays and that, and I'm trying to, because you've got to keep people up, right?
Right.
You don't want to like everybody going to sleep and then all of a sudden you're going to come back in 5 minutes. So I'm notorious for telling long jokes, often without a punchline. So I'll get into that sort of mode, which drives people crazy, and so I'll do that, and then I'll be told to shut up or pump the brakes, and that's
Maybe,
pretty much what I do. And
maybe,
and then we're back on air.
maybe when you retire, you can write a book of the punchlines for jokes you told.
Yeah, maybe I could find them. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you find is the worst part of travel, and or the best?
I don't think there's the best part of travel really, because travel takes you away from home, things like that. I
Yeah.
think I always used to, home was a house, right? But when
Right.
a house becomes a home, travel becomes so much more different. So travel's just a means to get there. Um, so yeah, that's probably the worst. I missed, what's the other half of the question?
The best part, if there is
Yeah,
one.
the best part. I'm still involved in a game that has given me everything in my life. So I think whether it's playing or broadcasting, it demands your best. It asks, all it asks of you is effort. So that I like. I don't like doing anything sort of half-hearted. And I take my broadcasting. People mightn't think so, but I take it seriously. I try and work hard. Like the little duck, right? The feeder
Yeah.
paddling. People don't need to know that. I've worked with so many great broadcasters and try to glean from them. Whether it's a Peter Ellis, I still have his line today, embedded in my head. Put the spaces in the right places. He always thought American broadcasts were over talked. There's a cricket commentator called Richie Benaud, who sadly passed away. I have his announcing laws in my phone, which is, triple bogey, the equivalent. He's a cricket commentator, is not a
Sure.
tragedy. The Ethiopian crisis is,
Yeah.
all these things that just help put your job into perspective. And you owe it to the viewer. I always think that. So I think the best part of doing what I do now too is that it requires effort. And I think effort's what keeps you alive and motivated.
Is the toughest part of your job, Frank, sometimes holding back on what you would like to say, or
Yeah.
knowing like you just said, know where to put the spaces, and Peter Ellis saying American broadcasting was overtalked, and I would agree with him to a certain degree on that. But is that tough to kind of like almost bite your lip sometimes, except when you're dealing with Colt Nost? I get that.
Yeah, no, it is, because you think about it. Sometimes you're employed because of what you say, right? So if you think that if you don't say anything, they're not going to hire you. Like who's going to hire someone to say nothing, which is crazy, right? But you're also tuning to watch someone play golf at an incredibly high level. And my first ever producer, a guy by the name of Keith Hirschland, I remember saying, you know, that's another thing that resonates with me today. He said, if you've got something more important to say than the shot being hit, then you should get another job. And it's the same. Like if you and I were to play golf right now, I'm not going to talk when you're hitting the ball. We're going to talk in between. So you just have to find those spots. So to answer your question, yeah, there's tons of things that you would like to say, but the silence too in sport is golden. If we've done our job, the viewers should know that this part is vital. And that's part of the magic, I think, when you do that. So yeah, of course you're going to hold stuff back to preserve that moment. If you don't, yeah, you might say something that's great, but you're actually disingenuous to the job, in my opinion, because you've stolen the moment that was really somebody else's. That's my view on it anyway.
I think one of the most significant in American television sports is when Tiger won the Masters at 2019, and Jim just kind of didn't talk right at the end. You know, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like it absorbed the moment type thing.
It was a colossal amount of time. I was involved in that broadcast. Nick Faldo and Jim Nance did not talk in there. And I remember talking to Jim about that, as well as Nick. And once again, they were both extremely good at what they do. And they realized there was nothing that you could say that would match that moment.
Yeah.
And if you were along the Tiger Woods train and you'd waited 5 years, was it 5 years? No, trying to think of his last major.
11, I think.
11, yeah, you're right. 11 years between, if you'd waited that long and finally this moment was here, he'd won another major championship and it was Augusta, you knew it. Everybody had their own importance of it, their own value of what it meant to them watching the screen. And I've never been more proud of two people I've worked alongside, and Nick Faldo and Jim Nance, for doing that. It was, I stayed there for the end of that broadcast. My last hole that year was 12. I do 11 and 12. And so the rest of the thing, I just watched the broadcast. They were, where I say my team, the team that I'm part of. And I was proud of that whole goddamn team. You know, they did their job and they never stole from the moment. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was a piece of brilliance there. Yeah. Last couple questions. If you some people think this is a funny question, but this is one you might ask Colt sometime. If you were on death row, what would your last meal be?
If you're on death row, probably wouldn't want to eat, really.
Yeah, but they always give you a last meal. So
yeah, I know they do, but I mean, I've never figured out why though. Why? I mean, does it really matter? But what would I eat? Actually, I know what I would eat. I would eat a jam sandwich, because my mum used to give me those every day when I went to school. She used to make a jam sandwich. I hated it. It was just like bread and jam. Yeah, either that or peanut butter sandwich. So I'd probably have a jam sandwich, because I might as well finish it off the way I started. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. And finally, here's your opportunity. What would your message to the world and or the golf world be from Frank Nobilo?
Wow. As I said before, golf's given me everything in my life. You're lucky to play this great game.
Yeah.
I think just fortunate. I don't care what level. And, you know, the people I meet, all the people I've met that play golf, they're as bitter and twisted and happy, and they're human because they play golf. They're more human because they play golf.
I think so. I think so. Frank Nobilo from CBS Sports, world traveler, ascending barbecue guru. Thank you. I appreciate it, my friend.
Hey, Jeff, have a great Christmas.
You too. We'll be back next week with another edition of After Hours. Until then, go out, play some golf. And as I always say at the end of the show, be kind.